If you speak more than one language at home, you have probably heard someone say that you should not mix them around your toddler. Maybe they tell you to keep one language with one parent, stop switching mid-sentence, or avoid using words from two languages because it will confuse the child. And when your toddler takes longer to say certain words, answers in one language more than the other, or mixes languages themselves, it is very easy to start wondering if you caused the problem. But new research from the Concordia Infant Research Lab suggests that language mixing itself may not be the thing parents need to fear. In 2025, researchers Alexandra Paquette and Krista Byers-Heinlein studied language mixing in bilingual families in Montreal and looked at whether it was related to children's vocabulary development. Concordia's summary explains that switching languages, even mid-sentence or for a single word, is common in multilingual homes and is often an intentional communication strategy rather than a careless mistake. The researchers found no strong evidence that vocabulary size was tied to language mixing, and they reported that children were able to navigate two languages even when both appeared in the same sentence. The important conclusion is not that language input does not matter. It is that mixing languages does not automatically harm a toddler's ability to learn words. That matters because bilingual parents often carry a very specific kind of guilt. They are not only trying to help their child talk, they are also trying to protect family language, communicate naturally with relatives, and deal with advice from people who may not understand what multilingual homes actually sound like. A parent may start a sentence in English, use a word from Spanish, Dutch, Arabic, French, or another home language, and then immediately wonder if they should have said it properly. Over time, that pressure can make parents less natural, less expressive, and less confident when talking to their child. The main idea of this video is simple. Mixing languages is not the same as confusing your child. In many multilingual families, switching languages is part of normal communication. A parent may use one language for emotions, another for daily routines, one language with grandparents, and another outside the home. Sometimes one word comes more naturally in one language because that is the word the family actually uses. Sometimes a parent switches because the child understands that word better or because the other adult in the room speaks a different language. That is not necessarily a sign of poor language input. It can be a flexible way of communicating inside a bilingual family. The problem is that many parents are told to treat language like two boxes that must never touch. One box for one language, one box for the other, and if the child hears both together, something will go wrong. That idea sounds neat, but real family language is usually not that neat. Real bilingual homes are full of grandparents, siblings, daycare, school, work, emotions, culture, and practical communication. The question is not whether every sentence is perfectly separated. The better question is whether the child is getting rich, responsive language from people who talk with them often. That is where parents should put their attention. A toddler learns language through interaction. They need people naming what they see, responding to their sounds, waiting for their attempts, repeating words naturally, singing, reading, playing, and using language in meaningful moments. A mixed sentence that happens inside a warm back-and-forth interaction may be much more valuable than a perfectly separated language rule that makes the parent stiff, silent, or afraid to speak naturally. For example, imagine a parent looking at a dog with their toddler and saying, "Look, a doggy. Myra El Perro is running." A strict language separation rule might make that parent feel like they made a mistake. But from the child's point of view, the parent is engaged, pointing, naming, responding, and connecting the words to something real. That is very different from a child sitting in silence because the parent is too worried about saying the wrong kind of bilingual sentence. The research does not mean every type of input is equally helpful. Children still need enough exposure to each language if parents want them to understand and eventually use both. If a child hears one language only occasionally, they may understand less of it or prefer the stronger language. That is not because mixing ruined them. It is because language grows with meaningful exposure, repetition, and real use. So the more useful question is not, did I mix languages today? The better question is, did my child get enough real interaction in the languages that matter to our family? If you want your toddler to learn a home language, they need more than a few isolated words. They need routines in that language, songs in that language, stories in that language, relatives who use it, play moments, mealtime phrases, comfort phrases, and everyday conversations that make the language useful. Mixing languages does not automatically destroy that process, but very little input in one language will make that language harder for the child to build. This is also why bilingual development can look uneven. A toddler may understand two languages but speak mostly one. They may use the word that is easiest, most familiar, or most often heard. They may answer in English even when a parent speaks another language. They may mix words from both languages in the same sentence, not because they are confused, but because they are using the words they have available. For young children, communication often comes before perfect language separation. Parents sometimes panic when they hear this mixing from the child, but it can be a normal part of bilingual development. The child is not necessarily failing to separate languages. They may be doing exactly what bilingual speakers often do, which is using their full language system to communicate. Over time, children usually learn more about when each language is useful, who understands which language, and how to adjust depending on the person they are speaking to. That does not mean parents should ignore real speech concerns. If a child has very few words across both languages combined, does not seem to understand simple language, loses skills, rarely tries to communicate, or parents have a strong concern, it is worth speaking with a pediatrician or a speech-language professional who understands bilingual development. The key is to look at the child's total communication across languages, not only compare one language to a monolingual child's vocabulary. This distinction matters because bilingual children are sometimes misunderstood. A toddler may know some words in one language and some words in another, so if someone only counts one language, the child may look like they know less than they actually do. A bilingual informed view looks at the whole communication system: gestures, understanding, words across both languages, social communication, and how the child uses language with different people. For parents at home, the practical approach is not to panic about every mixed sentence. A better approach is to make language rich and responsive. If your child says one word in one language, you can respond naturally and expand it. If they say agua, you can say, "Yes, water, you want agua, here is your water." If they point at a cat, you can name it in the language you want to support. If they mix languages, you do not need to correct every sentence like a grammar lesson. You can model the words naturally in your response. That keeps the interaction alive. The danger of overcorrecting is that the child may start to feel that talking is always being judged. For toddlers, the first goal is communication. They need to feel that their attempts work. Once the child is communicating, parents can gently model richer language over time. A warm model usually teaches more than constant correction. This is especially important when family members disagree. Some families hear one rule from a grandparent, another from daycare, another from social media, and another from a professional who may not specialize in bilingual development. That can leave parents feeling like every language choice is dangerous. The research from Concordia gives parents permission to breathe a little. Language mixing is common, often intentional, and not automatically harmful to vocabulary development. The main thing to protect is not perfect separation. It is meaningful language experience. That can look like one parent mostly using one language if that feels natural. It can look like both parents mixing if that is how the family really communicates. It can look like grandparents using the home language, parents reading books in both languages, songs in one language, daycare in another, and the child gradually learning which words fit where. There is no single perfect bilingual household formula that works for every family. What matters is that the child gets enough warm, repeated, useful language from people they care about. If this is happening in your home, tell me in the comments which languages your child hears and whether your family mixes them naturally or tries to keep them separate. That answer is often more interesting than the usual one language only advice, because real families have real language patterns. And if you want more parenting videos that turn research into practical everyday decisions, subscribe, because bilingual parents deserve better than being told they are confusing their child every time they speak naturally. The main thing to remember is this: mixing languages does not automatically confuse toddlers or damage vocabulary. What matters more is whether your child gets rich, responsive, meaningful interaction in the languages You want them to learn.